I never thought a simple visit to Professor Langford's lab would change my life so drastically. My name is Ryan, a 21-year-old college student majoring in biochemistry, but most people only know me as a quiet, somewhat reserved guy who likes to keep to himself. Few know about my fascination with crossdressing, a secret I've held close to my heart for years. To me, it's not just clothes or makeup. It's a form of expression, an escape from the rigidity of my daily life. The thrill comes from secrecy, the subtle blend of fear and exhilaration, knowing that at any moment, someone could discover my little indulgence. I met Emma 2 years ago in an organic chemistry class, and she quickly became the most important part of my life. Outwardly, we seem like the perfect couple, balancing each other in ways neither of us fully articulates. She's vibrant, assertive, and has a keen intuition that sometimes borders on frightening. Despite this, I've managed to keep my cross-dressing hidden from her. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I'm aware that introducing this part of myself might change the dynamic between us in ways I'm not ready to face. Professor Langford is the type of teacher who blurs the line between genius and eccentric. His experiments often skirt the edges of conventional science, and I was intrigued by one of his latest projects, a serum designed to temporarily alter the hormonal balance of a subject, theoretically allowing one to experience life through another gender for a brief period. The concept seemed fascinating and admittedly a little dangerous, but I was drawn to the challenge. I reasoned that if I were to cross-dress, even just for a day, it could be with scientific legitimacy. After all, my secret life as a crossdresser would remain safe under the guise of a controlled experiment. The day I entered his lab, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic mixed with the tang of metallic equipment. Shelves lined with carefully labeled vials and instruments glimmered under the fluorescent lights. The hum of a centrifuge added an almost hypnotic rhythm to the scene. Professor Langford's eyes lit up when he saw me, a mixture of curiosity and that strange, unsettling intensity he always carried. "Ryan, you're here for the trial, correct?" he asked, voice smooth yet probing. I nodded, trying to mask the nervous flutter in my chest. I had rehearsed this in my mind countless times, imagining the excitement of transformation, the thrill of stepping into a different identity, and yes, the undeniable allure of cross-dressing under scientifically approved circumstances. But I had not anticipated how surreal it would feel to be standing here, so close to what could alter my life permanently. I glanced down at the vial he handed me. The liquid shimmered with a subtle pearlescence, almost as if it held a tiny galaxy within. The possibilities seemed endless, and for a moment, I allowed myself a forbidden thrill, imagining the silk of a dress against my skin, the delicate brush of makeup enhancing features I rarely revealed to anyone. Emma's presence in my mind was both comforting and intimidating. Would she ever understand this version of me? "Relax, Ryan," Professor Langford said, noticing my hesitation. "This is entirely safe, theoretically speaking. You'll experience subtle changes, temporary at first. It will be educational." His words were meant to soothe, but a flicker of doubt ran through me. The serum represented uncharted territory, not just scientifically, but personally. I had crossed boundaries in my own room before, experimenting with clothes and makeup, but never like this, never with the potential to alter my body in a very real way. I swallowed hard, feeling the heartbeat in my throat, a nervous rhythm echoing the hum of the machines around me. I took the vial, my hand slightly trembling, and placed it on the counter. I watched as Professor Langford prepared a syringe with precise, almost ritualistic care. The air was heavy with anticipation, a mix of excitement, and an intangible sense of danger that made my skin tingle. "Are you ready?" he asked. I nodded again, more firmly this time. I wanted this. I needed to experience it. My secret self, the part of me that longed to explore femininity, to live in a body that mirrored my inner feelings, was urging me forward. The serum would be the catalyst, a bridge into a world I had only dared to imagine. The moment the needle touched my arm, a shiver ran through me, a mix of fear, anticipation, and an odd, tingling curiosity. Professor Langford's gaze never wavered, observing every micro-expression, every flicker of reaction. The liquid entered my veins, spreading warmth and a peculiar tingling sensation throughout my body. My pulse quickened, and I felt a strange lightness, almost as if gravity had lessened its hold on me. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me, aware that this was the precipice of an irreversible journey. Minutes felt like hours. I could feel subtle shifts. My muscles seemed to loosen, my posture subtly altered, and an unfamiliar softness tinged my features. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. I caught my reflection in a polished metallic surface across the room, and my breath caught. There was a delicate unfamiliarity in the contours of my face, a gentleness that was undeniably feminine. My pulse raced as I imagined the rest of the transformation, the thrill of slipping into a carefully chosen outfit, the softness of fabric against skin, and the intoxicating power of adopting an identity hidden from the world. As I took a deep breath, I felt a wave of internal conflict. Would Emma ever accept this? What about my friends, my family, my career? Could I truly explore this side of myself without losing everything I held dear? And yet, a small, daring voice whispered within me that this was my chance, to embrace a secret self fully, to step beyond the boundaries of expectation. Professor Langford watched silently as the serum continued its subtle work. He spoke finally, his voice a calm anchor amidst the storm of emotions inside me. Remember, Ryan, this is an experiment, not a performance. Observe your feelings, your reactions. This is about understanding, not just experience. I nodded, though inwardly, I knew that this was about everything I had longed for but never dared to touch. My secret yearnings were awakening, and there was no turning back. The room felt smaller, charged with electricity, as I took a cautious step toward the mirror. My reflection stared back at me with eyes that seemed familiar yet different, a whisper of the person I had always imagined becoming. And in that fleeting moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The moment I stepped away from Professor Langford, the sensation in my body intensified. A warmth spread through my limbs, subtle but undeniable, as though every nerve was awake and tingling. I could feel the contours of my muscles softening, my posture shifting in ways that felt both foreign and exhilarating. My reflection in a nearby polished surface caught my attention, and I froze. Something about my face was different, my jawline softer, my cheeks fuller, my eyes somehow wider. I blinked, unsure whether to marvel at the transformation or panic at the rapid changes. A shiver ran down my spine as my thoughts raced. I'd imagined crossdressing countless times in my private moments, slipping into skirts, brushing on makeup, feeling the rush of secrecy, but this was far beyond anything I had done. This wasn't just clothing or fantasy. My body itself was becoming a canvas, reflecting parts of me I'd never dared to reveal. The thrill mingled with fear, creating a cocktail of sensations that made my pulse hammer in my ears. I staggered toward a small table in the corner of the lab where I kept a secret collection of clothes, carefully stored in a nondescript box. The temptation was irresistible. My fingers trembled as I opened the lid, revealing skirts, blouses, and delicate fabrics I had long fantasized about wearing. Each piece seemed to beckon me, whispering promises of transformation and liberation. I hesitated only for a moment, thinking of Emma. Would she ever accept this side of me? Or would this curiosity, this need to explore, push her away? The questions blurred as the need to experience myself fully took over. I selected a soft, knee-length skirt with a gentle pleat and a pastel blouse that I knew would complement my changing features. Holding them in my hands, I felt a rush of vulnerability. My secret world was tangible now, a physical extension of desires I had kept hidden for years. As I dressed, the fabric brushed against my skin in a way that sent shivers of delight through me. The skirt swirled around my thighs, the blouse hugging my torso gently. I slipped on a pair of low heels, unaccustomed to the height, but reveling in the unfamiliarity. Every step felt deliberate, a careful dance balancing excitement and apprehension. Moving to the mirror, I studied my reflection with a mix of fascination and fear. The serum had worked faster than I anticipated. My hair, previously short and slightly unkempt, now fell in soft waves around my face. My eyes, larger and more expressive, seemed to glimmer with a life of their own. My lips felt fuller, my skin smoother, almost luminous under the harsh fluorescent lights. The transformation was more than physical, it was psychological. I felt a strange confidence blooming within me, paired with the delicate tremor of vulnerability. I was both myself and someone entirely new. Yet even as I admired the reflection, a wave of anxiety washed over me. Emma could walk in at any moment. Even the slightest noise, her footsteps in the hallway, a voice from another lab, the creak of a door, would betray my secret. My heartbeat quickened, and I instinctively adjusted my posture, trying to appear casual, unobserved. Every flicker of movement, every rustle of fabric felt amplified, echoing in the confined space of the lab. I was alone, yet intensely aware of the possibility of discovery. The hours blurred as I explored this new version of myself. Each movement, each gesture, was a study in femininity, an exploration of sensations I had long denied myself. The way my hips swayed with each step, the softness of my hands as they brushed against the skirt, the tilt of my head as I examined my reflection, it all felt intimate, thrilling, and terrifyingly public, even in the solitude of the lab. But the thrill was intertwined with an escalating tension. The door to the lab had clicked shut earlier, yet every sound from the hallway made me flinch. I imagined Emma walking in, her eyes widening in surprise, judgment, perhaps confusion. What would she think? Could I explain the serum, the experiment, or would it be too much to understand? The questions gnawed at me even as I felt a heady rush of liberation in my new appearance. I experimented further, brushing on makeup with careful precision. The powder, blush, and subtle eyeshadow transformed me further, enhancing features that were already beginning to shift under the influence of the serum. Each application was a revelation, a confirmation of the identity I had long dreamed to explore. Yet even as I admired the reflection, I noticed a flicker of doubt, a subtle tension in my jaw, a tightness in my chest. This was uncharted territory. One misstep, one unexpected interruption, and the fragile balance of secrecy could shatter. Professor Langford's voice echoed in my mind. Observe your feelings, your reactions. This is about understanding, not just experience. I realized he was right. Every heartbeat, every sensation was a data point, a window into the interplay of identity, desire, and fear. And yet, the experiential side was irresistible. The allure of transformation, the thrill of secrecy, was overpowering rational thought. I practiced walking, sitting, gesturing, every movement an exercise and adopting a persona that was both me and not me. The sensations were intoxicating, a mixture of empowerment and fragility. Each glance in the mirror revealed subtle nuances, softening of my hands, curve of my waist, tilt of my neck, that reinforced the reality of my transformation. The thrill was compounded by the constant undercurrent of suspense, the fear of discovery. Time seemed elastic, stretching and contracting with my heartbeat. I experimented with my voice, discovering a lighter tone that felt natural yet foreign. Each sound echoed in the lab, a reminder that even the smallest detail could betray me. The line between exhilaration and fear blurred, creating a heady cocktail of emotions that left me both elated and trembling. I sank into a chair near the mirror, taking in the full extent of my transformation. The serum had not just altered my body, it had awakened a side of me that had long remained dormant. The reflection staring back was familiar and foreign, a perfect encapsulation of desire, curiosity, and identity. I touched my face, tracing the softened jawline, the full lips, the subtle contours that defined this new version of myself. A shiver ran down my spine, and I whispered my own name, testing the sound, the feeling. Then the moment of suspense arrived. A faint creak echoed from a hallway, sending a jolt of panic through me. I froze, my eyes wide, body tense, as if every nerve had turned into an antenna for impending discovery. The door handle rattled slightly, and I realized with a sinking heart that someone might enter at any moment. The transformation, once a private thrill, had become a precarious dance between exhilaration and fear. I ducked behind the lab counter, heart hammering, breath shallow. The sound of footsteps grew louder, each one a potential revelation of my secret. The adrenaline surged, mingling with the serum's effects, creating a bizarre symphony of emotions: terror, excitement, empowerment, and vulnerability all at once. My hands shook as I clutched the edge of the counter, wishing I could disappear or, at the very least, remain unnoticed. The suspense hung thick in the air, a tangible force pressing down on me. My mind raced through scenarios. Emma walking in, Professor Langford checking on the experiment, even a janitor discovering the scene. Every possibility seemed catastrophic and thrilling at the same time. I was caught in the delicate balance of my desires and fears, the line between ecstasy and exposure razor-thin. And then, a shadow fell across the lab floor, a figure in the doorway. My breath caught, and time seemed to slow. Every fiber of my being screamed to hide, to retreat, to somehow revert to normalcy. But the reflection in the mirror told a different story, a fully transformed version of myself, radiant, vulnerable, and undeniably alive. The suspense reached its peak, the moment of revelation imminent, leaving every heartbeat suspended in uncertainty. I could only wait, frozen in a blend of exhilaration and dread, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The shadow in the doorway lingered, and my breath caught in my throat. I could barely move, my body frozen in a pose that both reflected and betrayed my newly transformed self. It was Emma. My heart plummeted, a wild rhythm echoing in my ears, as her eyes scanned the lab, her expression a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and something else I couldn't quite read. My pulse quickened as I tried to force my posture into something natural, pretending to be engrossed in a piece of lab equipment, hoping she wouldn't notice the delicate swirl of the skirt, the soft blouse, the heels that clicked faintly against the floor. "Ryan, what are you doing?" Her voice was calm, but carried an edge that sent a shiver down my spine. My mind raced. Could I explain this? Could I make her understand the serum, the experiment, my secret desires? Or would I ruin everything? I took a cautious step forward, trying to maintain composure. "Emma, it's not what it looks like," I stammered, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Every fiber of my being screamed at me that she could see through the facade, that my secret self, my newly transformed self, was laid bare in a way I hadn't intended. Emma's gaze softened slightly, curiosity overtaking judgment. "You look different," she said, stepping closer. The heels I wore made my movements slightly unsteady, a vulnerability that only heightened the tension. She circled me slowly, inspecting every detail, her eyes lingering on the delicate curves, the soft features, the subtle shimmer of makeup. Each glance was a test, a probe into my identity, and I felt exposed in a way I had never experienced. "Ryan, what happened?" she asked again, more insistently. The suspense of the moment was almost unbearable. I realized that every choice I made from here on would shape the trajectory of our relationship, and perhaps even my sense of self. I could retreat, hide, or try to explain, but nothing could erase the reality of the transformation now fully evident. Before I could respond, the lab door swung open abruptly, and Professor Langford stepped in, his eyes wide with both alarm and fascination. Excellent timing," he said, his voice laced with excitement. "I see the experiment is showing full effects." My body tensed further, caught between the curiosity of Emma and the authoritative presence of the professor. The stakes had escalated from personal vulnerability to public exposure within seconds. Professor Langford's arrival brought a new layer of tension. He began to explain the scientific nuances, the hormonal shifts, the temporary yet profound alterations. His words were a blur as my mind focused on Emma's reaction. Her eyes were wide, a mix of shock and something deeper, perhaps intrigue, perhaps confusion. The room felt charged, every heartbeat amplified, every breath a potential betrayal of my secret. As the minutes ticked by, the serum continued its effects, subtly refining my form. My hips curved more distinctly, my waist tapered, and the soft swell of my chest became undeniable. Every movement, every gesture I made in the presence of both Emma and the professor was a tightrope walk between confidence and exposure. The thrill of crossdressing had always been private, secretive. Now it was public, immediate, and fraught with emotional stakes. Emma took a hesitant step closer, her voice softer. "Ryan, do you like this?" The question was loaded, probing not just my appearance but my feelings, my identity. My heart raced as I considered how much to reveal, how much to conceal. The internal conflict was intense. Honesty could lead to understanding, but it could also shatter the delicate balance of our relationship. I swallowed hard, the serum's lingering effects making my throat feel oddly constricted. Yes, I admitted finally, the word both a confession and a declaration. I've always wanted to explore this side of myself. I just never had the chance until now. The vulnerability in my voice seemed to hang in the air, a palpable tension that left the room vibrating with unspoken emotion. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the lab. A shelf had collapsed under the weight of several vials, scattering contents across the floor. My heels clicked as I rushed to steady myself, the skirt swishing around my legs. The physical tension mirrored the emotional stakes, each movement a reminder of fragility and exposure. Professor Langford barked a startled command, and Emma flinched, the suspense escalating further. I realized that the chaos could either conceal my secret further or draw unwanted attention. There was no way to predict the outcome. In a desperate attempt to maintain composure, I grabbed a fallen wig from the table, trying to adjust it and cover the subtle changes that were becoming increasingly noticeable. The action was clumsy, a symbolic moment of my dual life, the precarious balance between identity and appearance. My hands shook, betraying the inner turmoil that pulsed like a second heartbeat. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, catching the subtle fumbling. "Ryan, is that?" Her voice trailed off, the implication clear. The suspense reached a fever pitch as I froze, the wig slipping slightly in my grasp. Every instinct screamed to hide, to explain, to retreat. The room felt impossibly small, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken questions. Professor Langford intervened, attempting to diffuse the tension with scientific rationale. The serum induces temporary physiological changes. The effects are reversible, but profound. Observe, learn, and understand. His calm explanation contrasted sharply with the charged atmosphere, yet it offered no solace. The emotional stakes remained, intensified by the presence of Emma, whose gaze now oscillated between judgment, curiosity, and something almost imperceptibly approving. I felt my pulse in my temples, the sensation of the heels, the skirt, the transformed body, all amplified by the suspense and the sudden chaos. Emma's tentative approach, combined with Professor Langford's clinical observation, created a complex tableau of exposure, vulnerability, and thrilling exhilaration. My body, fully transformed, seemed both foreign and intimately my own, a paradox that heightened the emotional intensity of every moment. Then, in a final, symbolic act of transformation, I stepped fully into my feminine persona, smoothing the skirt, adjusting the blouse, and raising my chin with a tentative confidence. The gesture was both defiance and invitation, a declaration of identity amid uncertainty. Emma's eyes widened, a mixture of astonishment and something deeper, acceptance, perhaps, or a spark of intrigue that mirrored my own exhilaration. The climax reached its zenith when a sudden alarm blared from the lab's security system. Red lights flashed, echoing off the metallic surfaces, and the room erupted into a whirlwind of movement. Paper scattered, vials clinked, and my carefully maintained balance teetered precariously. Every step, every gesture was fraught with the risk of exposure. Emma's hand brushed mine, whether by accident or deliberate contact, sending a jolt of electricity through me. The suspense was unbearable, the emotional tension at its peak. I realized then that nothing in my life would ever be the same. The secret, the transformation, the exhilaration, and the fear were now inseparably intertwined. The blaring alarm continued to echo through the lab, mingling with the chaotic clatter of falling vials and scattered papers. My heart raced, each beat a drum of panic and exhilaration. I felt the delicate sway of my skirt, the unfamiliar weight of my transformed body, every sensation amplified by the surge of adrenaline. Emma's presence beside me was a confusing mixture of comfort and anxiety. Her gaze flickered between concern, astonishment, and an almost imperceptible spark of curiosity. "Ryan, what do we do?" she whispered, voice trembling with both fear and intrigue. I wanted to respond, to assure her, but the words stuck in my throat. The serum's effects, my transformation, and the chaotic environment had created a perfect storm of suspense. Every instinct screamed that a single misstep could expose not only my secret, but also the fragile balance of our relationship. Professor Langford was frantically moving toward the control panel, pressing buttons, and issuing rapid commands. "Stay calm. It's just the security system. No one will come in yet." His voice, though meant to reassure, only heightened the tension. The red lights cast an eerie glow across the lab, highlighting the curve of my hips, the softness of my features, the subtle shimmer of makeup I had carefully applied. In that moment, I felt both vulnerable and strangely empowered. I instinctively moved toward a stack of boxes, intending to shield myself and the evidence of my transformation. My heels clicked sharply against the floor, each step a reminder of the precariousness of my situation. Emma reached for my hand, her touch grounding me, yet the contact sent a jolt of electricity through me. The emotional tension was nearly unbearable, a mixture of fear, excitement, and a profound sense of exposure. Suddenly, the door to the lab creaked again. My pulse spiked, every muscle tensing, as I turned toward the sound. A figure loomed in the doorway, a lab assistant, rushing in to respond to the alarm. Their eyes widened in shock as they took in the scene. Paper strewn across the floor, vials shattered, and me, fully transformed, skirt swaying, blouse perfectly in place, heels clicking as I moved. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching into an eternity as the assistant's gaze locked onto mine. Emma squeezed my hand tightly, a silent question in her eyes. I could see the conflict reflected in her expression, astonishment, concern, and a hint of something more. My mind raced, considering every possible reaction, every explanation, every potential fallout. The suspense was nearly tangible, pressing against my chest like a physical weight. Professor Langford's voice cut through the tension. "Ryan, remain calm. This is exactly the moment to observe reactions. Learn from it." His words, oddly clinical amidst the chaos, only heightened the surrealness of the moment. The lab assistant's mouth opened, but no words came out. Emma's eyes flickered between the assistant and me, her expression unreadable yet intense. In that suspended moment, I realized the full magnitude of what had happened. My secret self, long hidden, was now on display in a way that was undeniable. The thrill, the fear, the exhilaration, and the vulnerability all collided, leaving me suspended between revelation and concealment. I could retreat, hide, and perhaps reverse some of the transformation, but the serum's effects were ongoing, unpredictable, and irreversible in subtle ways. The assistant took a cautious step forward, and I instinctively adjusted my posture, smoothing the skirt, tilting my head, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. Emma's grip on my hand tightened, and I felt a surge of protective instinct mixed with fear. Every second stretched, a delicate dance between exposure and survival. And then, just as the assistants seemed to find their voice, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped the lab, broken only by the intermittent red flashes of the security system. I froze, unsure of what to do, my transformed body tense with anticipation. Emma whispered my name, her voice a lifeline in the chaos, and I felt the surge of emotion that had been building throughout the night. The room was silent, except for the distant hum of the machinery and the rapid pounding of my heart. I realized that everything, the transformation, the secret, the thrill, and the fear, had come to a point of perfect uncertainty. No one knew what would happen next. The suspense, the mystery, and the emotional intensity were suspended in the air, leaving everything unresolved. I glanced at Emma, her eyes wide and searching, reflecting the same mix of astonishment and intrigue that mirrored my own feelings. The lab assistant remained frozen in the doorway, a silent observer of the surreal scene. Professor Langford's voice echoed faintly, giving instructions I couldn't quite hear over the roar of my thoughts. And then, in the eerie half-light, I caught my reflection in a shard of broken glass on the floor. The transformed me stared back, soft, feminine, vulnerable, yet undeniably alive. My heart raced as I took in every detail: the skirt, the blouse, the subtle shimmer of makeup, the heels, symbols of the duality that now defined me. The reflection seemed to pulse with suspense, a visual echo of the emotional climax that had brought me here. The lab remained in semi-darkness, and I knew that the next moments would determine everything. Would my secret remain hidden? Would Emma accept this side of me? How would Professor Langford respond? The answers were uncertain, the future unresolved, leaving every heartbeat suspended in tension. I took a shallow breath, clutching Emma's hand, and whispered, "I don't know what happens next." The words hung in the air, unanswered, a perfect cliffhanger that left every possibility open. The suspense was complete, unresolved, and utterly compelling, ensuring that no one could look away or forget the moment. Every viewer, every observer, was left with a single question: what happens to Ryan now?